Hi, this is Jean Gunderson. I'm a Title I reading teacher here in South Dakota. I am home on a snow day in March of 2026, but in 2 days I will be at school. At the end of the day, I'll be on a Zoom meeting with other educators in South Dakota, and I'll be talking about the materials that I use working with small groups in Title I reading. So a lot of these things are going to be perfect for working with small groups, such as in Title and Special Ed, and some of them would be appropriate for Tier 1 classroom teachers. So because I need to practice for time, I thought I would share this with you in case you're interested in any of these resources. Before I had curricula for Title I reading, I did a lot of things that I made on my own. Here are a couple of slides that I had when I presented with Rachel Schaefer, who was my colleague and a South Dakota Teacher of the Year. She was the kindergarten teacher, and we worked together during a Walk to Read program. We used a lot of these resources from the Florida Center for Reading Research, fcrr.org. They have a lot of different games that you can use to practice foundational skills with kids. I used the tic-tac-toe board a lot and made a lot of fluency sheets on PowerPoint. The kids would read across, and if they got them all right, they could place on the tic-tac-toe board. And with the younger kids, like kindergarten kids with letters, sounds, that kind of a thing, they didn't have to get them all correct. We just did that later on in the older grades. I just corrected them and then they placed on the board anyway. I like to make a lot of things into games, especially students versus teacher. If they get it right, they get the points. If they don't get it right, then the teacher gets the points. And another thing that we used reading A to Z books at that time in kindergarten. And for older kids who needed the foundational skills work, fluency with those, we used the high interest, low level books. So they're low readability but high interest. They come from Saddleback or High Noon. When we ordered the first grade level readability, we found that the High Noon books have more interest for kids who are in upper elementary school, whereas the Saddleback were more geared toward teenagers. The top new item that I am using this year is called Word Connections, and it is completely free online. It's an open access site that you can go to, or a bunch of materials that you can get on this site. It's written by Dr. Jessica Toast, who is the editor of the Reading League Journal, as well as Dr. Devin Kearns, who's very well known as far as teaching multisyllabic words, and others as well. But it's completely free, so it's definitely worth going to this website and checking out. It is more for the small groups because first you're putting together words with bases and affixes and you're working on that slowly and seeing how words get put together. But then you're timing the kids, and there's quite a bit of timing on reading words. And the sheet that comes with it comes with four timing sections for four kids. So it would be for small groups because if you had 20 kids in a class, for example, you would most likely not be able to have the chance to time all these kids without wasting a lot of time. But you could adapt it for tier one. So that's a really great program that I'm using right now for teaching polysyllabic words. It's meant for grades 3 to 5, but there's no reason you couldn't use it after if kids needed that skill, because there's nothing juvenile about it. I'm also using it second semester with a group of second graders because somebody in the group really had a hard time leaving off the suffixes. So this program is very helpful for that. For foundational skills in the past, I have mainly used SIPs. And SIP stands for Systematic Instruction in Phonological Awareness, Phonics, and Sight Words. It's published by the Center for the Collaborative Classroom. They also publish Tier 1 curriculum. We have not had the great results with that curriculum that we have seen with SIPs. We have seen great results with SIPs in interventions acceleration groups. I have two videos on my YouTube channel about SIPs. So I have a YouTube channel. It's if you type Jean Gunderson and it's a pink J, or I have the link later that you can just click on. And it's just my family's channel, but I also have a playlist of educational videos. And I have two videos about SIPs on that list. I have had a lot of success using SIPs to teach kids to read or to reinforce their reading skills as far as foundational skills. Last year, I had two kids come into kindergarten that and they both came from out of country and did not yet speak English. They were emergent bilingual students. And I did not want to use SIPs. SIPs has really great decodables that are not very stilted and they sound realistic. But in order to do that, they have a lot of high frequency words that they teach. And they teach 15 high frequency words before you can even start sounding out the words for the decodables and the lessons. So I started with U-Fly Foundations for these students because you start right away with sounding out the words, and there are not as many high frequency words as there are with SIPs. So I do have a video about U-Fly Foundations versus SIPs for foundational skills, and that is on my channel, and they both have different benefits to them. When we used to use the Reading A to Z books, we also used some free decodables from Core Knowledge. Core Knowledge or CKLA, the paid version is a whole curriculum through Amplify, but you can get the Core Knowledge books online for free. And they have a lot of knowledge building books and they have decodables. Those are under the skills strand in the language arts area for the free download of curriculum. So one of the strongest sets of decodables if the kids are just getting started is at the first grade level. They have a lot of knowledge building to them. I have used these first grade decodables with older kids, such as upper elementary students that are coming from out of country and learning English, learning how to read. You got to take off the front and the back, which say grade one, or cover up where it says grade one. And they have really high interest information for the kids to learn, read. They can write about it. For example, in the first grade book, they go to the UK. A family goes to the UK and they're learning all sorts of things. They see a guy with a kilt and etc. And then in the seventh book, they go to Mexico and they learn all sorts of things about Mexican history and Mexico today and things like that. And it's all first grade reading level, but it's high interest and it's knowledge building. I also, the kids also like I think it's book four. It's called The Green Fern Zoo and it's about animals. And the kids seem to really like that one. I haven't used these in a while because I do have so much curriculum and the books that come with those. But this is a really great place to go for free curriculum. Sometimes I send these books home over the summer for kids to read right at wherever they just started reading, like if it's right after first grade, to reinforce those vowel sounds especially, but those phonics patterns. I do have a video on my channel about knowledge building and E.D. Hirsch, who is the founder of Core Knowledge. For reading polysyllabic words, as I mentioned before, I just started using this word connections, which is free online. Before that, I have used SIPS Challenge. I have seen a lot of great success with SIPS Challenge. I am going to do a video at the end of this year, so in a couple months, at the end of the school year, about SIPS Challenge versus word connections for teaching polysyllabic words. Because just like U-Fly versus SIPs, they both have their strengths. And one of the things about SIPS Challenge is that it just breaks it into syllable, and you're doing syllable syllable blend, take it apart, put it together at a faster rate. And the weakness or the thing that's stronger about reading connections that's weaker with SIPS Challenge is it's not really looking at the bases, suffixes, and affixes as much and their meanings. There is a vocabulary supplement that I tried. It came out last year. It's not as strong as I would like it to be. I might try it again, either with word connections or something else and try to put something together that way. I'll have to see what I decide there. But as far as rewards, Anita Archer has a program for polysyllabic word reading called Rewards. So I'd be interested to hear from folks who have used it. I have seen it, but I have not had the opportunity to use Rewards for polysyllabic word reading. So once we have those foundational skills and we know how to read the words that are in our oral vocabulary, my students go on to Reading Plus. Reading Plus is, in my opinion, and you can prove me wrong if you know something, the best way to solidify efficient, silent fluency, silent word reading fluency and silent passage reading fluency. I do have a video on my channel about Reading Plus and how I have used that. But that's where I put kids when they can read the words, I put them into Reading Plus. And that works on their silent reading fluency, vocabulary. It works on tracking, making sure that they're focusing on the words and reading efficiently. Sometimes after I put kids on Reading Plus, they do just fine. They can comprehend their grade level texts. They can comprehend the Smarter Balance test, which is our high stakes test in this state, and they do well on that. And other times they don't see a lot of success in comprehension from Reading Plus because it doesn't teach comprehension, it just tests comprehension. So then they come and work, those kids will come and work with me on comprehension. With comprehension, we do a lot of talking through what we're reading and making sure that we understand it. We do a lot of writing responses to the text, answering questions through writing. The stories that I use, and you can use many, many different things, of course. I use my stories from my box curricula. Novel studies. If you can find a novel that is it has a good theme throughout. You can really keep the kids thinking about, okay, we know this, we know that it's about this, and now what are we learning in this next chapter and building their knowledge that way as the plot progresses. One novel that I'm using right now with some fourth graders is called My Name is Maria Isabel. And the theme is very strong throughout about how important her name is to her and why it's a family name, and then how sad she feels when her teacher insists on calling her Mary because there are too many Marias in the class, and that theme is very strong throughout. And then the plot also builds, so there's a lot to respond to there with that novel. So novel studies can be very good for comprehension. My principal introduced me to Diffit, Diffit, which is one of the AI, generative AI programs, and it's very good for creating lessons about novels as well as things from online. So you can pull articles from online and put it right into Diffit and put what grade level you want it at, what standards if you want it to be at certain standards, and it will change the text to be that grade level, and then it'll give questions like multiple choice questions and writing prompts based on the text that it just created from that article. So we tend to read the article from online and then we read the AI created uh, version of it at grade level, and then we have the whole, all of the information we need about what is being written about there. And I have had kids tell me what they wanted to read about. I asked the fourth graders this year, and we did it with fourth and fifth grade, and they chose things like brain rot. So we did one about the history of brain rot and how it relates to other things like Microsoft's helpers like Clippy and things that are older than that, as well as Garbage Pail Kids and things like that. We did one on Care Bears, so I looked up and found a Care Bears article and just whatever they were interested in. So that was a lot of fun and taught them you could do a lot of, work on metacognition and stuff like that with these packets. There is a Lumos practice book for smarter balance testing. I've used a little bit of that in the past. There's the online practice tests for smarter balance. For smarter balance, if you have access to the portals for the kids, to the official place, they each have their own log in and they have practice tests, assessment blocks they can take through there. If you don't have that access, you can go to SD Portal Students and Families and click on that, and they have all the practice tests for all of the grade levels that are tested for the English language arts and the other tests. And they don't go anywhere. They're not in anybody's specific portal, but you can see all of the sample questions, including performance tasks. Jamestown has a critical reading program through McGraw-Hill. It was old. It was like 20 years ago and maybe even 30 years ago. but I somehow have them. It must have been samples or something that I got at some point, and they're very interesting, high interest for those older kids. They have stuff for grades 4 to 6, 7, 8, that kind of thing, and they have a lot of high interest stories or text followed by questions. And when we are looking at questions in my class, what we do is we say, okay, if the answer is A, you get the point. If the answer is B, you get the point. If the answer is C, you get the point. If the answer is D, I get the point, or something like that. And if you're in a large class, you could just split it down by rows or, group areas of the classroom or something like that. And that keeps them more engaged because you'll hear kids just let out a big sigh because they'll read the question and then they'll read answer A. And let's say they're the A kid, they read the answer A and then they go, because they see that's not going to be the answer. So that's a kind of fun, easy way to keep kids engaged when reading through things, especially things that they may not have interest with. So there's a lot of different options for comprehension. But what we need to do with comprehension is make sure that we're teaching comprehension and not just testing comprehension. So not just let's read this, now you answer the question. So we got to talk about it as we're doing it. I do a lot of think alouds. Well, I wonder about this, and that kind of a thing. Writing, especially writing in response to text, is what we are doing because we're using it as part of our comprehension. So in the classroom, they might be writing personal narratives and things like that. But in my class, they're writing responses to text to work on both their writing skills and their comprehension skills. I am familiar with IEW, the Institute for Excellence in Writing, and I have two videos about it using the level A structure and style, the first half, and then the second half. During summers, we worked on Sunday afternoons at our church on this with some kids, and then I also used it with sixth graders for the first time in the public school that I work at. I used it with sixth graders this year. I call the Writing Revolution, which I have read but not used, I call it IEW Light, and I am going to switch to it next year because somebody below where I pull kids for writing and comprehension, a third grade teacher is using this. So if I can build on what the kids already know, that's going to be very helpful. The special thing about IEW that I would still use is called the keyword outline, where kids read and then they can for each line make an 3 words for what they just read, but they have unlimited pictures and abbreviations and numbers and things like that. I talk about that more in my video, but that's a really good way to work on reading comprehension because you pull that out, you make your keyword outline, and then you write from that. And by then you really know what you read about. I am looking forward to using the Writing Revolution more next year. They have a lot of neat ways to help kids write through write about what they read and remember what they read and to learn to write better. For word study, actually my most recent video is actually about Reading Plus, but before that I had a video about spelling because I had the opportunity to present about it recently. I am not doing a lot of spelling, but I'm doing a lot of word study for understanding, learning how words are put together. But there are some things that you can use for both. You could definitely use this word connections to look at how words are put together and then also be able to read them as well as spell them. Teaching how the written word works is probably the best for this, but it would be more for grades 4 and up, based on the kinds of bases and the different ways that he's approaching it with the word webs and matrices, word sums. It's very good. Do recommend this book by Pete Bowers. He is the founder of Structured Word Inquiry, and there's a lot of stuff that's good for teacher knowledge in here as well. Then Words Their Way has a word study and action book. You can get this for $6 on eBay. I just looked it up. I got it for $3.99 at Half Price Books, and it has a lot of cut and pastes. It's just cut and paste. I don't have the teacher manual. I don't know what program it's from, but there's cut and paste, and they have really they're really good for the kids thinking about where things should go. So, for example, at the end, there are cut and pastes about affixes and they have, for example, let's say it was miss and pre. So yeah, that's easy. You just put all the miss words under miss, M-I-S, and pre words under P-R-E. But wait, there are oddball words, or we call them the imposters, because even though they have those letters, they do not, in that order, they are not prefixes. So for example, pretty, we have to take off that affix to see what our base would be. So if we take off the P-R-E from pretty, it would be TTY left. So it would be before TTY. That makes no sense. So it's not a prefix there. Mister. So MIS, we take that off wrongly. To wrongly TER. No, that doesn't make any sense. So it's not a prefix there. So it really helps the kids think through those things. Plus, before those harder or those more morphological based cut and paste. There's more phonics based cut and paste, and with the same kind of thinking though. Like it'll have OU as ow, but then it'll have the imposters where OU is not representing the ow sound. So that's a really neat book to have for only $6 from eBay. I do have a video about spelling and one about the SIPS vocabulary suffix supplement on my page. I will be doing a video about word connections and how word connections goes with um, how it compares to SIPS Challenge. What are the strong points of each of those programs for teaching polysyllabic words? This is the link to my speech to print Google Drive. You can click on this. I do have these Google Slides on the description of this YouTube video. Or you can just send me an email and I can share this with you. It is based on the book Speech to Print by Louisa Moats. And each chapter has a folder, and inside that folder are a bunch of documents that relate to things like orthography and phonology and things like that. It has a lot of documents in it, dozens and dozens. So if you want to check that out, you can look at that for free. Also, my YouTube videos are on my channel. And I am very interested to know what you recommend for teaching English language arts, whether it is in a situation like I'm in where we're trying to accelerate these kids up to grade level standards in certain areas, or whether it is for the tier one classroom instruction, because I know my colleagues would be interested to know about those things as well. The things that are for tier one, even though I'm not personally in tier one. So I do thank you for your time. And if you have any questions or you want to recommend something to me, please reach out to me here at my K-12 email address. Thank you for your time.